Usually you're supposed to make an intro for these kinds of things, to hook the viewer into watching the video to the end. But I feel like the title and thumbnail of this one is provocative enough as is. I'd love to jump into explaining how this makes even a lick of sense, because it does. It actually makes a lot of sense. Before I can get to the meat of this whole theory, some setup is required first. This theory is going to be sort of a sequel and or extension to another pretty popular theory regarding friend, and as such I will be relying on it as evidence. So it's best for me to do a short little recap on it to get ourselves on the same page. So let's begin by explaining exactly why I agree with the idea that I know what the doubters among you might already be thinking. Bluey being on my crew doesn't prove anything, because the my crew itself is one big joke about my theories. You'd be right. The thing is, I'm not talking about Bluey or anything related to the my crew. What I'm more interested in is talking about the room itself. This room, as far as we know, belonged to the real Mike, the one Tenna and Spamton both talk about, the one that did exist before, did live in this room, and was very clearly important to both of them. I mean, the way they talk about him, especially Tenna, paints him as almost a third member of the Spamton family, in a way. And what does Mike's room tell us about him? Is there perhaps any evidence, any clues, any signs we can spot in this room that can reveal more about Mike's real identity to us? Well, seems like this connection of Ren being Mike and having all of these relations to Spamton and Tenna is pretty much the only good, credible piece of information we have about Ren. Ren and Spamton have ties to Gaster, I guess, but besides the obvious Tale of Hell connection and everything we've been able to extrapolate from that, there isn't really much to talk about right now. We don't know any of the specifics, and it's been kind of difficult to explain or interpret how these two wildly different plots connect back to one character and to each other. We've done all we can, case closed, let's wait for more lore drops in the next chapter. Unless, of course, there was a character in Undertale that Friend/Mike was a parallel to, similar to how Spamton's a parallel to Mettaton, which we could use to predict certain details about them, but Friend is pretty much one of the few characters in Deltarune that doesn't seem to have any kind of obvious parallel. I mean, if there was one, we probably would have found one by now. Holy shit. Okay, Yapyar, what are you on about? This is still very little evidence to work off after all. A few visual similarities between characters that otherwise have nothing in common. How is this anything more than a silly crack theory? And I'll be honest, to me that's all it was when I originally came up with it. But then, out of curiosity, I kept looking, and I found things. There is more evidence to this. There is a lot more evidence to this. And it all comes from friend also being Mike. You see, you may or may not remember that Mad Mew Mew, her fight, her entire stuff lot, all of it, was included as exclusive content for the Switch 1 release of Undertale. And the Joy-Con controllers of the console are utilized in that battle's special mechanics. Does that remind you of anything? That's right, the Mike Room and its exclusive Switch content is one huge parallel to Mew Mew's battle in Undertale. Beating her even unlocks the casino minigame in the same room, just like how beating the free mics unlocks minigames in the Mike Room. There's also something to be said about how Mike is related to and or narratively paired with Spamton, and how, because of Spamton's parallels to Mettaton, this lines up with Mettaton and Mad being relatives and parallel characters in Undertale. Look, they even have a third family member that they both cut ties with, and connections to a royal scientist. And on top of all of that, there is one more parallel, perhaps the most blatant one there is, hiding in plain sight. Motormouth Mike. Mad Mew Mew. Mike's full name is itself a direct reference to Mad Mew Mew's name in Undertale, as if the parallels couldn't be any more blatant than they already were. Hopefully, this is enough to make a convincing argument, because I know how weird this sounds on a surface level. The insane, evil demon Tail of Hell is actually a parallel to the wacky trans femme cat girl. But I wouldn't have gone out of my way to make my first ever theory video out of this if not for the actual boatload of evidence there is to support it. What does this tell us about Friend? Do they have transcoding similar to how Spamton has transcoding, borrowing elements from Mettaton? I won't get into it, but watch this video if you're interested or want to fact check me on this. I might bring it up later. I do have a pretty interesting theory solving the connection between Friend's past as Mike and their present as this, which relies on Friend having story parallels with Mad, but I'll leave that as a treat for the very end of the video. Right now, I want to talk about the ideas that more immediately come to mind. Those being my friend Mew Mew parallel predictions for I don't think I need to get into why everyone thinks Chapter 5 will be the chapter where Friend finally enters the plot as a major character. Gerson called it the Field of Pink and Gold. Those colors are everywhere across the entire chapter. Point is, Friend is gonna show up in this chapter. That's almost a certainty. The question is, how? What will be their approach to confronting the Fun Gang? Well, so far, their MO has been hiding in the shadows, observing us from a distance, sneakily nudging things in all the right directions. Their character is that of a cunning trickster. They didn't forcefully kidnap a bunch of children and take them to that shelter. They tricked those children into following them willingly. They won't just try to fight us in Chapter 5. They will try to sneak up on us. They will try to deceive us. And might even trick us into working for them instead of against them. Now, I pose you this. What better way to hide from us and deceive us than a good old-fashioned fake identity? And what fake identity would be perfect for helping a cat blend into the fantasy Japanese garden dark world, if not an anime cat girl like Mew Mew? My theory for Friend's appearance in Chapter 5 is that they will show up disguised as a regular Darkner, one that looks similar to Mad Mew Mew, and will trick the Fun Gang into believing they're just a goofy side character here to aid them on their journey. When in reality, they'll be sabotaging them and springing traps for them every step of the way, as well as conspiring against their so-called king, who they will fool into trusting them by helping him with his investigation down in the basement. Should be pretty easy. Friend has a personal eyewitness account of the whole thing, that eyewitness being themselves, but Asgore doesn't need to know where they're getting all this info from. People already suspect that this shrine, with what at first glance appears to be the pen of hope Gerson talked to Susie about, is actually a trap set up by someone like Friend using the pen as bait.
Susie! Susie, the pen was symbolic! It isn't real! You're following the tail, Susie!
Recently, Toby released a screenshot of this location showing off the building in greater detail, and wouldn't you know, the orange sign right above the entrance makes a very familiar shape with its silhouette. If there's any place where Friend could ambush us, or show up disguised and try to trick us, it'd be this one. This red Japanese shrine building. Hey, wait a minute. I don't know, maybe Friend's fake identity will be a shrine maiden or something. Also, it's a small tangent. When I came up with this disguise theory, I decided to look up if there were any mentions of cats named Mike in Japanese culture, because I vaguely remembered hearing about something like that before, and wouldn't you know, the Japanese name for calico cats is Mike, typically spelled Mike when transcribed to English. This would be a completely random, meaningless connection that has very little chance of actually showing up in Deltarune, if not for the fact that I also discovered Mike the Tauhao character. Do you want to know what her lore is? I read some from her wiki page. She studied at a shrine to become a lucky cat able to bring various kinds of fortune to people, but she was discriminated for being a calico instead of a plain white cat and was kicked out before she could fully finish her training. She can use her magic to attract wealth or people, but only one of them, and usually drives off the other. This ability is literally beat for beat the theory about Friend being a lucky cat and pink and gold representing relationships and wealth, and Spamton's deal being to sacrifice relationships for wealth, which is why the deal was broken the moment he signed that contract with Tenna. And it's all tied to this character who's a cat girl and whose name is spelled Mike. We all know Toby is massively inspired by Tauhao and has made plenty of references to it in his games already. Could Mike/Friend also reference Mike? Possibly more in Chapter 5? It's possible. The MotorMouth MAD theory makes it more possible, because now we know Friend is already a parallel of another anime catgirl character. Shrines aside, we also got teased with this scene of Chris fighting a knife attack straight from the Undertale Photoshop Flowey battle. Everyone is assuming this has some kind of relation to the Flowey Darkener or the Darkers of the 6 flowers representing the 6 human souls, things that have all been heavily foreshadowed in pretty much every batch of Chapter 5 teaser content we've gotten so far. Or maybe this attack is related to Chris and confirms the theory that they have the Patience Soul. All good theories that I heavily agree with. I think they're pretty much the best bet we have so far, but I have another wackier proposal. What if this is a teaser of Friend's fight, and this attack is just bait to initially trick the player into thinking that the hidden enemy they're fighting against is someone else? Again, cunning trickster. But why would Friend have access to a knife attack in the first place? Well, because they're a parallel of Mad and have attacks that reference hers, just like how Spatton's attacks reference Metatons. And I don't think I need to explain why Darkner parallel of Mad would have an attack that's just an endless flood of knives. Again, I think explanations like the Flowey/Human Soul Darkeners or could be Chris Patience theory are more likely, but who knows, maybe I'm right with this one too. I'm just throwing it out there for consideration. I don't expect all of these to come true, only to maybe guess correctly with one of them. But I am sure about one thing. Friend is Deltarune's Mad Mew Mew parallel, and it is going to become relevant with Chapter 5, which has a Japanese theme fitting for Mew Mew. Alright, that's all the Chapter 5 predictions out of the way. There is one last thing that I want to propose. Near the start of the video, at the end of that first segment, I brought up a question that's been weighing on Friend/Mike theorists' heads for a long time now. How is Motormouth Mike, the TV time producer and Tenna's former right hand, also Gaster's personal amalgamate shadow demon? How does it all fit together inside of one character? Well, the discovery of these parallels has led me to formulate a personal theory/interpretation of all the info we have on Friend/Mike so far, which neatly ties together a lot of loose ends that have yet to be explained. So, gather around and let me tell you the tall tale of Motormouth Mike. Mike made a deal with a certain mysterious man, just like Spamton.
That's why he warned Tenna not to pressure Spamton into that contract. He knew that if Spamton signed it, the terms of his deal with Gaster would be broken and he would lose everything, because Mike himself was also a Gaster client. He didn't tell Tenna the full story, only that something terrible would happen, all because he himself would have to come clean about the terms of his own sketchy deal with the devil. In turn, Spamton knew that Mike had as many skeletons in his closet as him. That's why he hates Mike too. That man is a rotten criminal, but he keeps living at large with Tenna, who is none the wiser. He could have revealed the truth to Tenna to save Spamton's life, and even if that caused him to break his own Gaster deal, his deal wasn't tied to his entire livelihood like it was for Spamton. Of course Spamton hates Mike. Mike had the opportunity to sacrifice a piece of his own happiness to save the life of someone close to him, but he chose inaction. Or that's Spamton's take on it, at least. Does Mike have a motive to be a Gaster client, though? What could he possibly need so badly that he would make a deal with Gaster to get it? It's simple. Gaster offered Mike the means to become who he truly wished to be, who they truly wished to be, who she truly wished to be.
Hey there, Mike.
I'm not Mike.
Really? Who are you then?
Oh, I'm Bluey. Yeah, my name's Bluey.
Come on, Mike. This is your room. Says Mike right on the door. I know it's you.
Look, and I can
But
explain.
if you want to be Bluey for today, that's fine by me.
Really? I'm so relieved to hear that. You know, I really thought you wouldn't get it. You seriously accept this? Even though I didn't tell you I was doing this before?
Come on. You really thought I'd get mad at you for this? You always have my back. It's like I always say. MotorMouth Mike, the microphone who croons and groans. Now there's a guy who never lets me down.
Guy? Oh, wait, you don't actually get it, do you?
Get what? Alright. So anyway, how long is this Bluey thing gonna last? Don't get me wrong, you look real cute like that. But I did need the skills of a microphone guy like you for a gig I was planning later. Ooh, actually, do you take requests? Can you be someone else? I was thinking of doing a cowboy segment for Chris and her dad, and I would love if you could play a part.
A body. A body to replace Mike's old one. That was the deal they made with Gaster. He somehow transferred their personality, their emotions, their essence from the original Light World objects they were all tied to into this new body he created from scratch, leaving Mike's original body behind. You might have noticed that I sneakily proposed that Mike was originally a microphone darkener, just like how we all assumed, just like how Bad assumes it. Why am I so sure of this? Why am I so sure that Friend's body is not just their original body, how it always was? Or Mike's body after being transformed by Gaster in some way? Why do I think it's an entirely new one? Because it parallels Mad abandoning her old body, the training dummy. And also because, well, you never would have guessed it in a million years. But we've seen Mike's old body before. Right here. That's why this thing looks like a realistic, inanimate microphone. All the darkener essence and personality that's usually superimposed on top of it in the dark world has been stripped away and moved somewhere else. So now it appears exactly as it would in the light world. A regular microphone. There is one last loose end to this entire web of parallels and connections. A loose end that the people who have seen Spamton's parallels and transcoding analysis video have been waiting for me to address this whole time. If Friend acts as a parallel for Mad Mew Mew, then why does Spamton's acquisition of his Neo body already work as a Mad Mew Mew parallel? He doesn't just have Metaton parallels, he steals a body belonging to someone else and repurposes it as his own. Just like how Mad Ghost stole a Mad Mew Mew doll from Alphys. How does this fit into my theory at all? You might have guessed the answer already. Spamton is mostly a parallel to Metaton, and Friend/Mike is mostly a parallel to Mad, but the circumstances of how they acquired their bodies are actually swapped, with Spamton's being a parallel to Mad Mew Mew and Friend's being a parallel to Metaton.
Their body wasn't stolen, it was given to them by Gaster as his end of the deal. But just like how Metaton had to play the part of a killer robot under Alphys's command, Friend had agreed to perform a certain job for Gaster using their new body as their end of the deal. A job that even Spamton calls Mike a criminal for doing. Tana doesn't know it, perhaps he never will, but his beloved Mike, the guy who never lets him down, is the one to truly blame for TV Time's downfall. Because the job Mike did for Gaster is the reason his audience began to drift apart. Because the job Mike did for Gaster is the reason Des stopped showing up to the Dreamer house one day.